Colleagues, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Thank you very much for joining the Imu webinar on growing the oceans economy. We appreciate the time that you have taken out to attend the webinar. We extend a particular word of welcome to the panelists who would introduce just before they make their presentations. So welcome, colleagues. I trust that you would find the activity quite profitable in terms of our thought processes. So I think the prepared session is to support activities that assist in is to take is Professor Roninga from Mandela. We invited him specifically about the oceans economy and quite innovated. So Prof. Ngwadi, welcome, and it is now your opportunity to make your presentation. After Prof. Ngwadi, we would have an industry representative that would respond to the presentation by Prof. Ngwadi. Thanks.
Thank you, good order. There's, I think there's quite a big problem network connection when you were talking. I couldn't pick up a lot of things, but I managed to hear you towards the end of your talk when you invited me to make my presentation. Well, good morning, colleagues. Good morning, everybody. Welcome and thank you for attending. And thank you for inviting Odwa. I really appreciate platforms like these. I think I've got about 10 minutes to make my presentation. I've got a lot to say, but I'm just going to cut short a number of things that I'd like to convey so that we can engage at the end of the day. But the main thing about this webinar is the engagement, post our presentation. And I look forward to some input. So I'm going to switch off my video and I'm going to put my presentation up so that I can actually improve the flow of communication, of course, the data and so forth. All right, so excuse me, I just want to switch off my video. Let's see where we do that. And then I'm going to share my my PowerPoint. I'll try and keep the time, put order. Let's do this. Okay, that's good. Let's. Well, I hope everybody can see the presentation. Please shout if it's not visible on the screen. I'm learning these new techniques. It's a new world, new normal. Well, my presentation this morning is on the role of oceans economy in economic reconstruction and recovery plan. So I'm just going to give a brief input, from the academic point of view and touch a bit on the research that we were doing with Ms. Willis Omatekanya, whom I think is part of this presentation this morning. To start with, just give you a bit of a background, talk about reconstruction, where we come from. We all going through this COVID-19 pandemic, and we know how it ravaged our economy. I mean, very, very bad. I mean, starting from 2020, where we had restrictions that were announced, and then, of course, the lockdown was also announced around 26th of March or so last year, and the lockdown started, and we noticed that the economy was actually hard hit in terms of the investment flow At the same time, there was an announcement of a downgrade of the economy. So it's a double-barrel gun. I can imagine a double-edged sword. Here we're sitting with a COVID-19 pandemic. Here the rating agencies are saying, guys, we're downgrading you. So it's honestly a big, big problem. Now, measuring by the treasury bills, and one day in the treasury bills, you can see that it took a dip, somewhere that period where we had a knock there. And then, of course, we can see the rand also, began to kind of, depreciate. During that time, there was no exports taking place. And we can see the COVID-19 cases were also expanding during that time. So economy is in a bad shape. So we're talking recovery this morning. And of course, if you could get just a bit of economic analysis, growth was weak on a 5-year average, talking about 0.6% on the 5-year average. Unemployment has been 33.3% on average, 5-year average. Poverty, 30.8%, 5-year trend. Inequality is sitting at 0.62. So the structure of the economy such that it's been in a bad shape pre-COVID-19 already, as it were. And what COVID-19 did, it just worsened the situation, worsened the unemployment situation, and so forth. Things were quite very, very bad. You can see these diagrams here. And again, if you look at this, you can see the GDP, declining. That's unemployment as well, talking about almost 33% on the 5-year average. So it's really been very bad, So if you talk recovery, it just means that there's a lot of work upon us, and this platform, I think, can help us to take us somewhere. What I'm trying to show you here is, the stages of the lockdown, starting from the red zone where everything stopped, say like stage 5, like everything stopped, the double coincidence of what's the name, simultaneous shock of supply and demand. No production is taking place, no demand on the other side. Everything is just on a standstill. We went through to stage 4 of the lockdown, where some activity was allowed, subject to extreme requirements. Went to stage 3, where things began to be eased, a little bit. Some of the restrictions were eased and so forth. Went to stage 2, further easing of restrictions, but maintenance of social distancing and other COVID-19 requirements. So we are looking, from the red zone, we're all looking forward to go to the green zone. And of course, being in the green zone, we even want to go to the greener pastures. How do we get to the greener pastures, So we in stage lockdown, stage 1, COVID-19 vaccines also coming into play to improve the situation. So under stage 1, most normal activity resume, health guidelines allowed at all times. So we all, adhere to this COVID-19 to get the economy on the recovery. From the economic decline, you see moving up here, economic recovery coming from, a low ebb where nothing has been taking place in the economy. So it's a long road towards recovery, so that we can get up to full recovery, almost like a pre-COVID-19 stage, where all sectors can operate and be profitable. So then suddenly, there's wave 3, upon us. Then we had our usual family meeting where we kind of find ourselves reversing back to stage 2. It's like a turnaround, U-turn back to where we are. So why I'm putting this slide here to say we have a lot of work upon us. A lot has to be done to really pull us up all that way to the greener pastures where we can say, really, we are there where we're supposed to be, creating the necessary jobs. Unemployment figures were released as about a week ago, we're talking about 2.5%. And of course, GDP, also at the lowest ebb. So we really having to pull this economy up, towards a success. What we have serious questions to ask ourselves here. Serious questions. We talk about recovery of the economy. The debate about V-shape, U-shape, L-shape is important, but what is important more than that is what do we do? What do we do, whether we're in a V-shape or whatever shape? What interventions do we need in this economy? We have to ask ourselves serious questions. For instance, if you talk about investments, we all talk about investments. We've seen the president talk about investments in infrastructure and so forth, job opportunities. That's good. Now, this was work done. It's the same by my colleague, Dr. Kambale Kavase, derived these figures here, where looking at stimulating the economy, where if you have 1 rand, for example, 7% of that is towards investment, 9%, the government, and of course, 45% more towards business. But questions that we need to ask ourselves is, in which type of investment must we invest in order to recover this economy? In which sector? A social sector. which economic sector do we need to put the investment? Which income group about households? And they've called about business, which economic sector do we really need to focus on? In this webinar this morning, all these numbers, all these people sitting here, we are all convinced that oceans economy is the way to go. We wouldn't be here if we're not convinced. So I don't have to preach to the converted. We're all convinced here. So these questions, we have an answer. We're saying OE, go that route. Fine. If we say oceans economy will help us to recover and reconstruct the economy, let's have a look at first, look at this oceans economy in a context of economic recovery. Oceans economy has been identified to be another dimension to unlock growth potential in the future economy. This concept has origins in the green economic concept endorsed by UN on sustainable development in 2012. It involves parts of the economy that depend on the ocean as input in the production process, which by virtue of geographic location takes place under the sea. So we are convinced this morning that oceans economy will help us to recover from this economic devastation. How do we define oceans economy? Because we cannot be able to tackle this if we do not know what is this to begin with in terms of definition. We define oceans economy as economic benefit and value we realize from Earth's ocean coastlines. Globally, ocean economy generates 2.5 trillion per year from the combination of fishing and aquaculture, shipping, tourism, and other activities. So you can just check other sources as well that are listed here, where they talk about definitions of oceans economy contextually. So let's accept the fact that we see oceans economy as economic benefit, because economics is about studying how to maximize from scarce resources. So how do we maximize benefit from the resources that come from the ocean? So we agree on that to say that's how we define. So what is the role then of oceans economy in economic growth? We know what it is now. So what is the role? Countries have turned to oceans as new source of innovation, competitive advantage, and source of jobs. I just had an email this morning from India. This IORA, organization that talks about Maldives, for instance. How they've improved and turned that economy to oceans economy. And turned it from low income to high income, using oceans economy as an engine of growth. So ocean economy financing seeks to promote economic growth by taking to account social inclusion and therefore the preservation or improving the livelihood, while at the same time protect the environment. So that's according to World Bank. So there's also other sources that one can think about here. Of course, we don't have to talk about this one. We know it's part of the National Development Plan. We need to create so many jobs and so forth. So I'm going to leave that one up. Then we talk about Operation Pakistan, which is now the instrument that we are using to, in fact, to enact and, of course, contribute towards oceans economy. Operation Pakistan is a South African government delivery program initiated in 2014 in order to fast-track the implementation of the country's NDP 2030. So the aim of this is to create job opportunities, poverty alleviation, social equity, and so forth, and all that goes with it. So Operation Pakistan focuses on unlocking the economic potential of South Africa's oceans, which could contribute up to 177 billion rands to GDP by 2033, and between 800,000 and 1 million direct jobs. 47 detailed initiatives have been identified, which on implementation will increase the ocean's economy GDP contribution by 20 million and lead to the creation of 22,000 direct new jobs by 2019. So also the oceans have the potential to contribute up to 177 billion rands to gross domestic product and create over 1 million jobs by 2023, Ops Pakistan 2015 and so forth. So I'm just quoting these sources here. And of course, we've got these sectors that, of course, called labs that use as access to the ocean's economy access points. So look at Ops Pakistan. According to Professor Hosking, 2014, he works out to say that oceans economy will add 4.4% to GDP, and we expect a trickle-down effect. In other words, what this means is that your initial investment towards oceans economy should then, at the end of the day, have a trickle-down effect. In other words, it moves towards economic development, whereby you create jobs, reduce inequality, you develop the economy. Of course, you reduce poverty as well. So that we expect a trickle-down effect from oceans economy. It's got a potential to increase economic activity through GDP and job creation. That's Finley. So I like this that Professor Hosking talks about here, to say that in his calculations that is what this economy should contribute to as economy. We need that. So I'm gonna dwell so much here that this is about welfare economics. To say that whatever government spends the economy, it has got to improve welfare. That's welfare economics. The so-called paradox of efficiency and so forth. The literature in terms of welfare economics, how we want to improve the economic welfare of the citizens of South Africa, particularly Eastern Cape. So I'm just going to leave this. So let's come to the core of my presentation, towards recovery through oceans economy. So this research is based on so-called quintile regressions and analysis of variance techniques, and we use the local estimated scatter plot smoothing the data, which is a non-parametric data model that handles this non-linear relationships. So just gonna go through to the within in our assessment, we had looked at all these sectors that have been identified: aquaculture, marine coastal tourism, marine transport and manufacturing, small harbor, because all of these must make a contribution. They must contribute to GDP. It's very important that whatever performance, how do this sector, how are they performing, and then look at ease of doing business, the lending rates and so forth. That's your banking sector, government integrity and so forth. How do these things together, help this oceans economy to lead us to recovery? So these are just my equations for three models. Model 1, where unemployment become a dependent variable. Model 2, entrepreneurship is dependent variable. Model 3, very important, your GDP becomes a dependent variable, to see how these sectors that I've mentioned here, how they factor into your GDP. What contribution does it make to GDP? And taking the estimated values, you can see that as Professor Hosking has mentioned years back in his study about this oceans economy contributing towards a 4.4%, which is the next slide. But this is about unemployment. You can see that the aquaculture with the negative values there, making a dent towards unemployment. Small harbor development, something is good is taking place there. That you see that it has a dent towards a reduction of unemployment. We can see the other sectors as well. Yes, there is some degree of impact on unemployment, but not as much as one would want in terms of what we plan, the number of jobs that's been created. So there is a potential, it's constrained, and I hope by the end of the day we can identify what are these constraints. Otherwise, the potential for job creation is actually displayed out in this diagram. Of course, we see here that in the beginning that unemployment has been very high. These are all estimated values of these oceans economy that I've identified, and you can see that values are still very positive in terms of unemployment until we get to the stage where we say, fine, there's a little light at the end of the tunnel. In terms of entrepreneurship, again, we can see that there's some degree of possibilities yet constrained. We can see this revolves around your mean zero. So there is a potential. You can see what happened here in this time, which is a very great push towards that, there was a recession here of obvious reasons, but you can see from that side here that there is some degree of entrepreneurship push, but it's really very much constrained. So one is going to look at what are these constraints that constrain this entrepreneurship not to be created to the level that we want in terms of the oceans economy. Because to recover the economy, you've got to boost your businesses. Right now, very important variable, which is why we are very pleased to see this, in the sense that Professor Hoskin talks about almost 4.4%, and our figures also show pretty much the same as that document. However, we see a slight downward trend, which is not as a result of oceans economy per se, but the general economic problems that we have in South Africa. However, all we can see is that all the values here are positive. So the fact that it's saying that oceans economy contributes positive to GDP, and we can see the evidence here that we are above zero, meaning that there's a positive contribution from oceans economy to GDP. So all we need to do is how do we maximize this growth here? All right, I'm about to finish. So look at these models consolidating to oceans economy financing. I didn't want to give sector by sector, but we have that in our full paper. For the sake of time here, we'll just draw only this, which is everything, that all your sectors are included here. We can see again, model 3 GDP, all the variables here, all the coefficients are positive, meaning that indeed, oceans economy is an engine of growth, in terms of GDP contribution. We can see entrepreneurship, the negative values again, that there is some constraint here. Employment creation, we can see at a high quintile, there's a negative value, meaning that it has a potential to reduce unemployment should we intensify our investment into this sector. So the picture looks to me, it displays a positive potential. Obviously, I look at the period before and after, before Pakistan implementation and during it, and evidence shows that yes, there are significant differences. Now, when you look at this thing, we look at the shocks, GDP shocks, and throughout there's a zero. You can see throughout this period, this is your oceans economy financing, and you can see that all the shocks are positive. Only one case where it's negative. Again, we see a potential here to say that oceans economy has a positive contribution towards GDP. But during the Ops Pakistan implementation, 2014, the red lines identify 2014. Since that time, we're battling. We need to push this up so that we can be, at that level. So these are the shocks since the Operation Pakistan, which takes a value of 1, which is a dummy variable. Unemployment, again, we can see potential to create unemployment, to create contribution towards unemployment. You can see here that you got positive values, but here it's got negative values, meaning that it's reducing unemployment. Can you go at that point here? The more intensive your investments are towards oceans economy, and the more you get to reduce your unemployment as generated by that figure. But since 2014, we have a little minute dent on unemployment here. Again, as I said, we need to look, is it skills that we need? Infrastructure, what exactly do we need to actually make a big dent like this one here on unemployment? Entrepreneurship, again, you can see right here, potential to create entrepreneurship, small businesses in this oceans economy. You can see that shock there. And of course, got negative shocks. And of course, since Ops Pakistan, we can see those red lines, again, causing shock towards entrepreneurship. So what do we say? Based on this evidence, yes, oceans economy, Chair, poses us an opportunity to make use of it to recover the economy. There's opportunities for job creation, opportunity for tourism, competitiveness. Coastal towns have access to these resources. There's a potential for improving livelihoods, as given by the evidence. There's a potential for broadening your tax base as government needs more income because our expenditure is way above our income. Engine of growth and potential to contribute towards the economy. What are the challenges? Maybe, but we'll hear from everyone here. Do we have enough skills? Is there sufficient infrastructure? What about socio-cultural belief systems that could perhaps constrain access? What about capital, access to capital? Is there visible involvement of the township businesses in the oceans economy? Yes or no? So we'll get the answers. Are there still reported cases of police harassment? for the guys that now that are informal. Transformation, to what extent is it taking place in this sector? Awareness as well. Are people fully aware of the potential of the oceans economy? So these are things that perhaps will get the answers. We recommend develop relevant skills, have a comprehensive entrepreneurship development across the board, enhance access to capital, create awareness, create a collective learning space to develop those requisite skills, expand research and innovativeness in this area. So this is the beginning of things. Focus on translating growth into job creation, because growth on its own is not the end, it's a means to an end, because you can have what we call jobless growth. We are scared to have that problem in the oceans economy, where you grow the economy through oceans economy, but that growth don't translate into job creation. How do we avoid jobless growth in the oceans economy? Intensify investment towards oceans economy, infrastructure development, so that at the end of the day, we can be able to say, fine, we are all embarking on the strategy towards full development. Chair, this brings an end my presentation this morning. I want to hand over back to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Prof. Nwat. We appreciate your presentation this morning, and I'm quite certain that the colleagues have been able to understand and engage with the presentation that sought to define what the oceans economy means, the contribution to the GDP, the role of Operation Pakisa, and many other variables that we need to consider in this regard. We are now going to invite Mr. Patrick Kammerman from Damon Shipyard to share with us the industry perspective, because we can have all of these things, but industry is critical in the role that it can play to influence and participate in a meaningful way. Patrick comes from Damon Shipyard, but he also forms part of the South African Ship Repairers and Association. Patrick, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I appreciate that. I'm just looking for my presentation quickly. It was here a moment ago, but as was said, we have challenges sometimes with new technology. Right, there it is. I've got it. Please advise if you can see it.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the opportunity that you've given us to present. Firstly, let me make an apology from my side. I'm suffering with flu at the moment, so if I don't come across very clearly, please forgive me, and please don't hesitate to just ask if you can't hear something clearly. That said, I'm here in my role as the spokesman for the South African Association of Shipbuilders and Repairers. And also in my paid job, should I say, I'm the services repairs manager at Diamond Shipyards in Cape Town. So we are very much the cold front of the industry. The prof now just gave a wonderful presentation from an academic point of view and the statistics, etc., which was very edifying. However, we are at the other end of the spectrum. So we as the Association of Shipbuilders and Repairers, SASR, we're the people that actually at the coalface. So it's going to be an interesting contrast as I work through my presentation to see how we experience and how our view on the industry and where we're going to as an organization. We represent quite a number of companies in the ship repair, but let's present, and then at the end of the session there will be an opportunity for questions and answers. So let's get with it. The association was started in 1978, I believe, and it's a non-profit organization within the South African shipbuilding and repair industry. And our vision is to help members to grow the business both nationally and internationally and to improve the industry. That's the overview mission that we have. We cannot do it alone. In our country, with our policies that we have, for example, the ports are all government controlled, and majority, all the big ports are TMPA, and then some minor ports which are DAF or public works. But largely the economic drivers for our oceans economy is via our ports, which are controlled by the National Ports Authority. And our strategic partners, if you start with those ones, is of course TMPA. We are two sides of the same coin. We cannot exist without TMPA and infrastructure. And on the other hand, TMPA, we wouldn't have a ship repair division if it wasn't for the industry supplying the skills and actually execute and bringing the contracts to the table. So TMPA is by far and away our most important driver as an organization at the moment. And I must repeat this simply because we haven't got the freedom to be able to create our own ship repair facilities within our ports, or to create even a new port which is dedicated to ship repair. Just to elucidate on this a little bit, around the world, if we look at the world best practice, we'll find that in most cases the different countries that are booming in ship repair are much less government involved within the controlling of the water space, which enables private companies to create the business, which of course is the driver for the industry. But I'll get into more detail as we progress. So we as an association are represented in all the major ports, and now more recently, as of really this year, I guess, towards the end of last year, we started a drive to get involved in all the ports, because collectively we want to become the overriding umbrella organization for all ship repair activities, simply because we can coordinate matters better with our principal, which of course TMPA. We also obviously want to, we tap into and we are exposed to the strategic planning of TMPA and the other drivers as well, which control us. So we look at it from a strategic point of view, but don't forget we are comprised of members who every month and every year have to show a positive bottom line, otherwise they go out of business, which unfortunately in recent years there's been plenty of in our organization. So to continue with our strategic partners, we have Armscor, which manages the naval dockyards both in Simonstown, I beg your pardon, and Durban. And as such, very similarly on a much smaller scale, though, we interface them with them because we need to track their development so we can actually enable the industry to grow in their space as well. Now, why is it that TMPA and Armscor are strategic partners? Well, the industry is wholly reliant on dock space in order to survive. Docks are the lifeblood of the industry. And just for those of you who are not familiar with the terms, a dock is not when the ship comes alongside into a harbor, it comes alongside a berth, a quay. But to take the ship out the water to get the underwater area of the vessels exposed, they have to be docked in either a dry dock, which is a big pit in the ground where you flood and a ship drives in. It's closed off with a gate, and then the water's pumped out, and the ship is then, one could work on the underwater sections. And this, by law, is required for all ships to be docked every 5 years. So there's a huge requirement driven by the International Maritime Organization, which is a ready market for us to tap into. However, in our country, we have not had investment into dock space for many years. The youngest of our docks is something like 65 years old. The oldest one was in fact commissioned in 1886, which is the Robinson Dry Dock in the V&A waterfront in Cape Town. And yeah, that gives you an idea that we really do need investment in this area. And I must repeat, and I'll repeat it a few times in my presentation, dock space is the lifeblood of the organization. We are completely constrained by the lack of docks. So what we've got, we want to then, it's very expensive to invest in new docking is expensive. However, we believe the money is out there to invest. At the same time, the docks do not belong to private industry. All the docks, with the exception of 2 floating docks in Durban, belong to the state in the form of TMPA for most of the ports. And then in Simonstown, there's a synchrolift and there's also a synchrolift in Durban run by Armscor. So Armscor has 2 synchrolifts, one in Durban, one in Simonstown, and they have a graving dock or a dry dock in Simonstown as well. That's why they are our major partners. And let's move on to the presentation now. Our members comprise of a wide variety of types of companies. Firstly, ship owners and shipbuilders, companies who own and build ships, ship repairers. Obviously, that forms majority because there are many different companies, but there's different levels of ship repair. The first level is the main contractor, who's the company that brings in the ships from abroad. In other words, a foreign client will engage a main contractor. The main contractor will then define with the client the scope of work, and then we will engage in a myriad of subcontractors below us, and so and so and so. So it really is a widespread network of companies that gets involved in the docking of one ship. And that's what I've gone on to number point 3 there, the subcontractors. So they're supported at a lower level. And then suppliers, we have manufacturing done locally for some of we have to purchase spares, we have to purchase a myriad of different things. So it's as I say, it's a very wide range of activities that we engage in within our members, and hence the importance of having a body like SASA to represent not just their goals and aspirations, but also to enable the growth in the sector. We've recently also included, as of this year, in fact, as of only a few weeks ago, we've got our first international associates. These are companies that are based internationally, but who want to have a view and an interaction with South African companies for their good, and also so they want to have services when they bring their ships in, and secondly, they want to perhaps utilize this opportunity to market their own goods within South Africa. It's very important to us because we believe that this is the one way of marketing what we as South Africans can present to the world. Training. It was alluded to earlier about education. At this stage, we've been supportive only in training, to the degree that we send through now and again the statistics that we have. Many of our companies, my own included, have quite well developed apprenticeship training schemes. We are very active in training the new generation and the future generation of skilled workers within this industry. However, I must tell you too that it's really based around our own requirements, and very often the services we buy in are with outside our control to train. I'll give you an example. We at Diamond Shipyards are primarily involved in the shipbuilding part as well as ship repair. So we've got a very extensive apprenticeship program in the training of boilermakers, welders, and outfitters, etc. But when it comes to the niche like marine electricians, because we don't have a big enough requirement for electricians, we found at the moment there's a huge shortage. We don't do our own training in-house. We're reliant on the industry. And I've spoken to Odwa about this, we need to align the requirements of the industry with the training institution. So that's quite an exciting venture that we want to embark on to get that aligned. Because at the moment, when you need a skilled person, you can't invest another 2 or 3 years to train the person. You want them now. The opportunity is now. So we have to look into the future and have a strategic view on how we're going to approach developing the skills we need across the spectrum of ship repair and shipbuilding activities. I must tell you also that the the way that ship repair contracts work is they're highly manual in many areas. It's a tremendous potential to grow jobs very easily because of the numbers of people we need to work on a ship. I'll give you an example. In the days that up till fairly recently, 5-6 years ago, when we brought oil rigs into the country for refurbishment, you'd have upwards of 1,500 people working on an oil rig. And if the second oil rig can be brought to the company as the first one is being finished, then the jobs become permanent. The flip side of that is we cannot keep consistent work coming into the country. Then the people who are employed in the industry as skilled marine people then have to look for opportunities elsewhere. And the elsewhere is in the general industry, mining, and sometimes even the rare skills which are sort of internationally leave the country, and we lose those people completely. So we need to really enable to retain the skills that we do develop. We need to have consistent, large contracts coming in all the time into the industry. We also have give legal assistance to our members because we do fall under the Merchant Shipping Act, and the other areas that pertain to our members where we assist them with legal matters as well. I won't go into much detail on that today. Marketing is a very interesting one because up till now we do our own individual marketing as companies, and this has been. We've identified this as one of the reasons why we haven't grown perhaps as we should have, because we believe that South Africa Incorporated to embark upon a cohesive marketing strategy as a country, we would bring a lot more ships into the country than individual companies doing their own marketing bit by bit, and of course the resources, it's very expensive to do international marketing. So we believe that if we did it together, we could get a much greater impact and more bang for our buck, so to speak. Opportunities, goals, and challenges, of which there are both. They're plentiful both on the opportunity side and also the challenges side. There are plenty of those too. The opportunities are that we are, by the grace of God, strategically positioned in the world's geography, where we have a natural strategic position to maximize the opportunities that sail past our coast every single day. We have thousands of vessels passing our coastline, and only a limited number come in for actual trade, and even smaller number come in specifically for the ship repair requirements. With more of that but later. But there are, folks, we are firm believers in the immense potential that we have, but we haven't yet exploited at all. We are sitting in a situation whereby even if we brought in another, if we brought in 50% of the number of ships that we bring at the moment, it'd have a huge impact on job creation and the economy in general. Excuse me. Ship repair industry at the moment has about 15,000 direct people employed. It's difficult to define because it's difficult to find what you include in the ship repair industry or not. There are many companies out there that do work in the ship repair industry, but are not necessarily specifically geared towards only working in the ship repair industry. And therefore they are certainly employing numbers of people because of the ship repair industry, but they don't report their figures necessarily into it either. The sad thing is that this number has shrunk significantly over the years. A couple of decades ago, we employed almost double that number of people in the industry, and we've had some major players that in the industry that unfortunately have gone to the wall. The most recent one being DCD, and they employed upwards of 1,000 people themselves, and unfortunately they couldn't survive for various reasons, which I won't go into, and maybe some of those reasons will come out during our discussion. And of course, don't forget there's a knock-on effect within the industry, because when a ship comes into port, they have to get fuel. They have to buy victuals for their people. They change crews, so therefore crews stay in hotels. They're going to fly out of our countries. Therefore, the airports get more business. While they're here, they take the opportunity to do a bit of tourism and do a bit of shopping, and so it ripples through the economy significantly by bringing vessels into the country for ship repair. And again, for the same reasons above, it's difficult to define what the contribution to GDP is, but actually it's upwards of 6 billion per annum. Our goals as an organization are to attract more business into our dry docks and alongside repairs. This I mentioned earlier, and we don't own, the industry does not own the docking spaces in the country. And our belief is that how can I say, if we did a concerted effort to increase the efficiencies within the docks at the moment, then we could significantly increase the throughput of vessels. Because don't forget, the longer a vessel stays within a dry dock, it's denying other vessels to come in. So the idea is really to make the docks work highly efficiently, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and make sure that all the required spares and other services are available. Every time that a ship is in dry dock and it waits a few days for a tug to take it out of dry dock, those few days have a knock-on effect in that we cannot, the industry is not earning money. We cannot be adding value during that period. But anyway, we'll go into more details. Our goal, number one, is to attract more business, because it comes in the form of foreign exchange generally, and that's obviously what our drive is, to create jobs and to create investment in the country. I just want to explain to you also that we in South Africa obviously have our local vessels that we mainly work in the commercial world, and of course those are being maintained on a regular basis, but it's very limited. We fast reach a saturation point in the turnover and the contribution of the local vessels can give towards the economy. We could only grow if new vessels or foreign vessels come into the country, because at the moment, if they don't, we just maintain the status quo and we miss the potential that we have. So we've explained a little bit about dry docks and the need for many more dry docks. Every one of us who is involved in the high level, the main contracting level in ship repair, can attest to the numerous occasions we have to turn vessels away from our shores because we don't have the dock space available. I would say, I know in my case, it's probably once or twice a month, and I'm sure all the other ship repair companies can testify to similar figures. So we could, if we had the dock space, we could make a significant contribution. Excuse me. The other thing I'd like to point out is that the development or the increasing of dock space available, other than making the ones we've got more efficient, but even that's out of the industry's hands. The creation of new docks is very much out of our hands. The industry, even if we have the money, which often we do have, to invest in a floating dock or a synchro lift or a dry dock, we are totally dependent on the state's approval of that license, and that process is fraught with problems and delays. I've mentioned earlier that our goal, one of our goals, is for the South African Association of Ship Repairers and Builders is to be accredited in all the South African ports. The other industry bodies have got it quite well tied up, and the reason is not to become a monopoly. The reason is not to become a union, but the reason is to increase efficiency. And one of the areas that we need to increase the efficiency in is communications. And we find very often that within our major strategic partner, being TMPA, there are various databases. We talk to some of our members, but not all. So we would, and also to increase the professionalism, the safety, the transformation, everything from that point of view. We as an association have the ability to have daily contact with our members, which is not always as easy for TMPA to do. Well, we've spoken about increasing the docking capacity. So we can't, in fact, attract more ships to our ports without increasing docking capacity. And then we've also touched on this. As I said, the current docking facilities are owned by TMPA, and it's been long recognized by TMPA that they struggle to manage and maintain the dry docks. The simple reason being is that it's really outside their mandate. The prime mandate of TMPA, if you look at the Ports Act, is to keep the harbours open and efficient for trade. And the secondary mandate is fairly vague and broad, and under there is to increase job creation. And we kind of fall into that bracket without being mentioned as a ship repair industry. We've been speaking a lot about ship repair industries, but we also have some companies in this country, both in Durban and in Cape Town, that do the building of new ships. And whenever one builds a ship, one has to be able to launch the ship. And within Durban, those companies that do build up there are blessed with their own launching facilities. In Cape Town, we are totally reliant on the TMPA facilities, which is the synchro-lift, which is very limited in size. So the shipbuilding industry is quite held back by the lack of better launching facilities within TMPA as well. So TMPA recognized some years ago, 2010, in fact, 2010, they pushed out an RFQ for the concessioning of the dry dock facilities throughout the land. And of course, to prevent a monopoly of any one company being awarded the concession, the idea was that the industry members form consortiums in the different ports, and as consortiums manage the docks. Well, this went ahead, and we certainly did. We formed consortiums in the different ports to take over the docking facilities in line with the RFQ in order to put a bid in fact. It was very expensive. If I think back, it was about R1 million per member to form these consortiums, these new companies. And unfortunately, although it was a TMPA initiative, there was some change in the executive management just the last minute when the concessioning was about to be signed, and it didn't take place. So now, 11 years later, we are revisiting that at the moment, and we met with Transnet and TMPA towards the end of last year to put this back on the table. The idea was very well received, but more recently we've been told that in fact the TMPA or Transnet is going a different route, and that is they want the SEZs, the special economic zones, nearest to the ports to in fact manage the concessioning of those docking facilities nearest to them. This is a new development, which might well be a good one, but unfortunately it does push back by probably a year at least any movement in this area. I'd also like to just say to you that for those of you who are not familiar with how a port works, the docking facilities are crucial to us. There's no question about that. But we're also completely reliant on other aspects and services that TMPA provides. For example, when a ship comes in, there's pilotage. When she's pushed alongside the quay, there's tugs. When the ship is transferred to a dry dock, the tugs are once again are used. And when she comes out of dry dock, they're used again. And then we need repair keys for the ship to be alongside whilst she's doing the above water maintenance repairs. So it's a wide range of services that we require from TMPA, and this doesn't always act, how can I say, in a coordinated fashion. but that's more on the challenges. So there our goals are to attract more business, to be the accredited body for the industry, and to increase docking facilities, and of course to pursue the concessioning of TMPA ship repair facilities. TMPA will anybody you speak to within TMPA will tell you that the ship repair costs TMPA money. That's quite true. You will not recover the operating and maintenance costs of docks simply by that activity alone. One has to augment and supplement one's income with additional services, and those services are provided by the industry and not by TMPA. So the model that TMPA uses, has used for many years now, it will always result in a loss to the company or the entity that is just managing and maintaining the docks. The challenges that we have, as I alluded to a bit earlier, sometimes the alignment within the TMPA departments engaged or required for ship repair are not necessarily aligned. It can be days sometimes when one waits for services, simply because the priority is, and I fully understand why it is, that the ports have to keep the ships coming in and out of harbor for trade purposes are the lifeblood of our country. So clearly, if there's a shortage of tugs, the tugs that are available have to assist vessels that are coming into and out of our harbors. And then if there's spare capacity, then the ship repair industry is assisted. This leads to really long delays, which are extremely unproductive. One can lose in a couple of days one's any kind of profit margin that one may have had in doing a job by the waiting for services when nothing can happen. The other thing that's important to understand is that the commercial world out there, the international commercial world, they pay higher rates for speed. So when a ship is taken off hire to do mandatory maintenance or repairs, it is not earning any money. And whilst not earning any money, they are losing hundreds of thousands of dollars, sometimes on a daily basis, depending on the type of ship. So speed is all important to them. So when we are delayed unnecessarily by days and sometimes weeks, which is outside very often of the industry's control, we just don't get that client back again in our ports. And we have a litany of examples of where clients that we have wooed at great cost to come to our country, or when they leave, they say they'll never come back here because it takes too long to get the ship out back on hire, and various other aspects as well. So we really do need to look at the efficiencies and how we turn around the ships that are being repaired. The TMPA and industry commercial alignment is very important. And please, folks, don't think that this is a tirade against TMPA. Not at all. There are many very, very skillful and efficient people within TMPA, and who do their best to assist the industry. It's more structural or systemic problem that we have, and that the different departments that we interface with are not necessarily aligned with each other. So as it passes from one department to next department, sometimes the urgencies are lost. The other aspect which I've had lots of personal experience with is that I don't think the folk that we're talking to sometimes understand by delaying us by a day or more, or whatever it might be. They don't know the ramifications. The fact that we could lose a return client, the fact that somebody is paying for the delay. And we as an industry are not government subsidized. We have to live on our own bottom lines. And that is why employment has shrunk to the degree it has within the industry, simply because on the one hand, we're getting fewer ships into our ports. On the other hand, we're paying more money, paying more out as an industry for leakage, for losses, for money that we are losing, which was not could not be passed on to the client. Like we can't anticipate that the ship would be alongside for 3 days waiting for a tug. We just cannot factor that in. If we tried to factor it in, we wouldn't get any business at all. The other thing is that I don't know if many people know this, but the TMPA's internal goals are sometimes challenged, are at odds with some of the country's overreaching goals as to grow the economy. I'll give you an example. TMPA is held accountable to Transnet to show a profit in various areas. One of which, of course, is as a landlord. TMPA rents out land to us, the industry, and we have a continual dialogue with them because of the problems that we have. We as the ship repair industry have to invest in hundreds of millions of rands worth of equipment and buildings and infrastructure, and yet until very recently, until this year, in fact, the lease period was 5 years. You cannot. It's too short to get return on investment. The other thing is for TMPA or our landlord to align our costs with international norms. My company in particular, have done a lot of research into this because we own many yards internationally, and we rent other yards internationally. And on average, the cost per square meter of renting land in, for example, Cape Town, where I'm based, is between 10 and 12 times higher per square meter than the international norm. Now, whereas that might be a very good business model for TMPA, it doesn't do much for growing the ocean's economy in the space of ship repair. Right, let's move on because my time I see is ticking. Operation Phakisa. For those of us who've been around for some years, we grew into Phakisa right from the stage that was a series of workshops that were performed throughout the industry. And as the Prof was saying earlier about looking at the why do we need this? What do we need? All this was done in 2013 and early 2014 in the series of workshops, and it was really well handled by all concerned. The inputs were as true then as they are now, and those out of those workshops came the Phakisa goals and initiatives, and they're still valid today. So a lot of the research, for those of you who haven't read the background to Phakisa, I'd encourage you to do so because everything is still valid. The problem is that Phakisa, which was announced by the then President Jacob Zuma in August of 2014, coincided with state capture and other issues and problems that we've had. And so as a result, there was no investment by the state other than hanging a label of Phakisa onto Transnet and TMPA's own CapEx budgets. So really there was no investment by the state into Phakisa. And a lot of the goals that were set by Phakisa then still haven't been reached. In fact, most of them haven't. And most of them are really critical for the ship repair industry. Just one example I'll use is that in 2014 it was announced the timescale to get new cranes for the docks and the wharfs.
Patrick.
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes. I've been hearing you.
Patrick.
Hello.
Yes, we do need you to conclude.
Okay, can you hear me still?
Yes.
Okay, I will continue, and I'll conclude.
Thanks.
Okay, so Phakisa has been a challenge to us. We're nowhere near where we should be. Training, we'll talk about, we've touched on earlier a little bit, but it's a very high potential that we can look at. And then, of course, we would like to see accountability from the companies involved with key performance indicators and measurements against what was projected. I'm not going to go through this. This is more detail, which you. Okay, I think if you want me to conclude, that's it. Just one last thing from me. We have amazing potential to grow as an industry and to really contribute significantly to job creation. We do need all the players, all the stakeholders to work together. We see it as a very at the moment it's a jigsaw puzzle of pieces, and they don't always fit together properly. If we as all the stakeholders could actually align ourselves with one master plan, I believe we could get there. And being positive, I believe we can. Thank you.
Patrick, thanks very much for the presentation. We are going to rejig the program just a bit to allow for some easier movement into the next topic. Our view was that the size of the South African market by itself would need the scales. So we are of the opinion that we need the Africa Free Trade Zone. So we now have Ms. Trudy Hatzenberg, the director of the Trade Law Center, to speak to us about the Africa Free Trade Zone, where the oceans economy is mentioned and what it is that we can do to make sure that it finds its expression in all other legislative documents. Thanks very much, Trudy.
Good morning, and thank you so much for the invitation to participate in this very important discussion. I've been asked to take a look at the African Continental Free Trade Area and specifically where the oceans economy fits into that broad agenda. Very briefly, ladies and gentlemen, can you hear me now? Very briefly, ladies and gentlemen, what I'd like to do is to provide a brief overview of the African Continental Free Trade Area, and then to take a look at its agenda and where the oceans economy and the very broad agenda that that contains fits into the AFCFTA negotiating agenda. I will reflect also, and having listened to Patrick, this has been particularly important with respect to where are the opportunities for South Africa in the AFCFTA. Ladies and gentlemen, very brief background on the African Continental Free Trade Area. We know it's an incredibly ambitious initiative to create a single market for goods, services, capital on the African continent, eventually integrating the markets and the economies of all 55 African Union member states. To date, only one of them, Eritrea, has not signed the agreement, but 36 have so far ratified the agreement. This means they have committed to the undertaking to implement the African Continental Free Trade Area and all the provisions that are included in the different agendas under that broad umbrella. Very briefly, and this is where we start to see the intersection between the AFCFTA agenda and the oceans economy development agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a phase one, which we're currently still negotiating key aspects for, which covers trade in goods. So of course, this is particularly important in the context of the fisheries and aquaculture sectors of the broad oceans economy. It also covers trade and services. And the issues that Patrick was raising this morning, ladies and gentlemen, are very much part of the trade and services agenda under the AFCFTA. There is also a focus on dispute settlement, as there should be if anything goes wrong. That's the safety valve always. Phase two of the negotiations are particularly important for the future development of the oceans economy. And they cover issues such as investment, competition policy, and intellectual property rights. The investment agenda, ladies and gentlemen, is a particularly important one because we've seen the AFCFTA generate a lot of interest, not only in terms of investors within the African continent looking at new opportunities, but also global investors. And I think this will be particularly important for some sectors within the broad ocean economy, as we have global investors coming to establish commercial presence in one of the state parties. In South Africa, for example, when they do that, ladies and gentlemen, they become eligible for the benefits under the African Continental Free Trade Area alongside any nationally owned companies. Phase 3 covers digital trade and e-commerce, increasingly important as we see the digital transformation of our economies. And then there is also a new protocol to be developed. And this will focus on women, youth, and SME development. And I think from the oceans economy development agenda, as I understand it, this could be a particularly important one as well. Very briefly, ladies and gentlemen, this is the legal architecture, if you will, of the African Continental Free Trade Area. And this will give you some indication of the detail that we find in the provisions under the African Continental Free Trade Area that govern trade in goods, trade in services such as marine transport services, protocol on dispute settlement, but then very important also the phase 2 agenda, as I've mentioned, and phase 3. You will see that the annexes are where the actual detailed commitments are to be found. And those are the ones that industry has to study very, very carefully. Ladies and gentlemen, this is just a brief update on where we stand. Keep in mind that the negotiations began in 2015 and proceeded very, very quickly. So at this stage, 36 member states have ratified the agreement. Those are the ones in dark pink. You see South Africa, very one of those early countries that joined the queue to ratify the agreement. There are 39 that have completed the domestic processes. Usually parliamentary approval for an international agreement is required, and 3 of them, including Algeria, Democratic Republic of Congo, have completed those processes, but not yet deposited the instrument of ratification. That basically means it's a letter which signifies that as a sovereign state, we agree to be bound by what is in the agreement. So that's legally binding commitments, which of course in the case of a dispute would be very important. So this is a list of all the countries. And ladies and gentlemen, this is important to note because this is where the opportunities on the continent will lie for the oceans economy from South Africa's perspective. But let's take a look very briefly at some detail as how the oceans economy fits into the AFCFTA agenda. And we start by taking a look at trade and goods agenda. Where are the opportunities for South Africa? And here, of course, ladies and gentlemen, we take a look at certain subsectors within the oceans economy. Marine fishing and aquaculture, for example, minerals, marine and seabed mining are increasingly important if we take a look at a country like Namibia, for example. So what are the details in the protocol on trade and goods of the AFCFTA that we have to study carefully to look at opportunities? The first annex is where we find the applicable rates of tariff duty, so the import duties. And this, ladies and gentlemen, can make a huge opportunity in terms of the relative competitiveness of our products in the export markets. So we take a look at which countries specifically offer opportunities and what the applicable tariffs are right now, and by how much we will be able to negotiate tariff concessions into those export markets. Very important, ladies and gentlemen, are the technical issues related to the national origin of a product that is traded under the AFCFTA. These are the rules of origin. They determine the economic nationality of a product. And they're absolutely critical to ensure that only products that are actually produced in one of the countries that is a party to the AFCFTA will get the benefit. So we don't have a situation where transshipment, in terms of which goods come from a global source, find their way into one of the African countries and then move around under the preferences of the AFCFTA. That would undermine the integrity of the AFCFTA. So the rules of origin, these are always very, very difficult to negotiate, and they run into a lot of detail. Some of the rules of origin are product specific, and for the fishing industry and the fisheries, broad fisheries and aquaculture industry, this is really important. They relate to the vessels, to factory ships, for example, but also to the fish and aquaculture products. And so there again, to benefit from what is in the AFCFTA, ladies and gentlemen, we have to study the detail related to, for example, a particular fish, and it may be snook. This seems to be a very sensitive one currently in the negotiation process, but also the ownership of the vessel, the flag under which it flies, the crew, the nationality of the crew. Those are all extremely important details which will determine eligibility for the preferences under the AFCFTA or not. When we deal with fish and aquaculture products, ladies and gentlemen, then standards, product standards are absolutely critical to protect human, plant, animal health and the environment. And that, of course, is increasingly important. So the standards, the phytosanitary standards have already been concluded. They are available for study. And if anyone is interested in those, I'd be very happy to share further details on them. This is just some details. We have a very practical guide on the rules of origin, ladies and gentlemen, because this is the fine print which can actually make or break what looks like a very attractive opportunity under the AFCFTA. Where are the opportunities, ladies and gentlemen? And this is really important to keep in mind in terms of the fundamental question as to who is negotiating with whom on the continent. And what we've got to keep in mind, South Africa belongs to the Southern African Customs Union. So these are the 5 member states in the southern part of the continent. But South Africa also belongs to the Southern African Development Community. So we are trading under 2 different existing regimes already. We will not, ladies and gentlemen, open up and renegotiate the terms of those regional economic communities. So it means that South African traders will continue to trade with SACU and with their SADC partners as we are trading now. So the benefits will come from in this broad gray area here. So very much in East Africa, North Africa, West and Central Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, just to note that the countries in North Africa, and we're looking at Tunisia, Algeria, all the way across to Egypt, their traditional trade partnerships have been with the Middle East and with Europe as their immediate trade partners, but they are now looking to sub-Saharan African opportunities. And some of them have a lot of interest in the oceans economy. So we could see competition from those countries coming through as well. So just as there will be opportunities, ladies and gentlemen, there may well also be more competition in certain subsectors of the ocean economy. Let's keep that in mind. If we take a look at existing trade on the continent, we find it's highly concentrated in sub-regions. And in fact, this is data I've looked at for last year. We find that most intra-Africa trade actually takes place in Southern Africa. And if we look at the Southern African Customs Union, ladies and gentlemen, this is the checkered area at the bottom of the graph here. More than 42% of all Africa's intra-Africa trade takes place among the SACU countries. If we look at the Southern African Development Community, 63.7% of intra-Africa trade last year took place in SADC. Ladies and gentlemen, the conclusion is that South Africa plays an extremely important role in intra-Africa trade. And that is true both for goods and for services trade. So when we take a look at the different sectors of the ocean economy, South Africa has a footprint already on the continent, not necessarily as well developed in certain subsectors of the ocean economy as we could have. So there are still opportunities for the taking under the AFCFTA. But very importantly, ladies and gentlemen, the trade in services agenda under the AFCFTA is particularly important for the oceans economy, because what we do see is that with the 5 priority services sectors that have been identified under the AFCFTA, and let's have a look at those: financial services, transport, communication, tourism, and professional services. In fact, most of those, ladies and gentlemen, are relevant for the oceans economy development under the AFCFTA. Patrick has reminded us about transport and transport-related services, freight and passenger services, repair services, and the collection of services that go with ocean and passenger and freight transport services, ladies and gentlemen. But equally important are some of these other services sectors, including, for example, the tourism sector. So if we take a look at marine and coastal tourism, this offers significant opportunities. It's of course a sector that has been particularly hard hit by the COVID-19 pandemic, and it is also facing significant challenges as a result of the climate crisis. So it's a sector which is vulnerable, but still offers significant opportunities. So we have to take a look at what will be negotiated under the AFCFTA. Financial services, that of course extremely important in terms of access to finance, cross-border payments on the continent. All of those issues will be covered under the financial services agenda. But I want to come back to the transport services because of course here there are a number of different subsectors, road, rail, alongside marine, passenger and freight transport. But we have the collection of port support services for maritime transport, shipbuilding, repair, installation, and so on, as Patrick has reminded us. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a very, very important subsector of the broad transport sector, which is being negotiated under the AFCFTA. And I'm not sure to what extent this subsector, marine, passenger and freight, and the associated services sectors have actually been involved in the preparation for the AFCFTA negotiations. The trade and services negotiations are not yet complete. This means that there are opportunities for the industry to make input into the negotiating agenda, the negotiating strategy, but very importantly for the industry to alert government, to alert our negotiators to where the opportunities are. The private sector is dealing with these issues on a daily basis. Negotiators need your input in order to shape a negotiating agenda which will open up further opportunities on the continent. Ladies and gentlemen, the professional services negotiations, this includes a range of services, accounting, engineering, legal, and a range of other professional services. They are equally important for the oceans economy, but also in the context of our discussion here on maritime transport subsector. Additional services sectors may well be added to the negotiating agenda of the AFCFTA, ladies and gentlemen. We know that some countries are interested in adding energy-related services, distribution services, and so on. So it is an agenda that we need to watch very, very carefully to see where additional opportunities may come through. This is just very briefly, ladies and gentlemen, when we take a look at the negotiation of liberalization of services and maritime transport subsector, this is the kind of detail that we're looking at. There's the international shipping, and keeping in mind, if we take a look at our overall trade, our global trade, Africa's global trade, ladies and gentlemen, more than 90% goes via maritime transport. So this sector, from a global trade perspective, is also critically important, and what we negotiate under the AFCFTA can have a very important impact on our global competitiveness, global efficiencies, and relative prices for the services that we offer. The services, cargo handling, storage, literally a long, long list. This is the kind of detail that is on the negotiating agenda. Use and access of port facilities, again, a lot of services that are extremely important. Essentially, what the negotiations will be about, ladies and gentlemen, is for foreign services suppliers to have access to our domestic services opportunities, and of course for our services suppliers, our companies, to have access to those opportunities in countries with whom we are negotiating under the AFCFTA. Ladies and gentlemen, the phase 2 issues which have just begun. This is very, very early stages still. Again, that presents an opportunity for input from an ocean economy development agenda perspective. We should not miss that opportunity. Investment, this very, very important area of economic governance. It relates not only to the rights of investors, the rights of government to regulate, but it also relates to a very practical agenda, the investment facilitation agenda. How long does it take to establish a business in a foreign jurisdiction? What are the regulatory requirements, for example? So that becomes particularly important in reducing the transaction costs of establishing a commercial presence in one of the other countries on the continent. Extremely important for expanding the footprint of South African maritime and oceans economy business more generally across the continent. Competition policy, ladies and gentlemen, again, very important to assure fair competition in all forms and in all markets. What we do know is that if we take a look at some of the large players in a myriad of sectors which are important for the oceans economy, we find that they are dominant players. In some cases, their market strategies transcend national geopolitical borders. And of course, these strategies cover particular sub-regions on the continent. It is therefore very important that we have cooperation to effectively enforce competition policy across the continent, so we make sure that anti-competitive practices do not erode the benefits or in fact force companies out of the market. Intellectual property rights, ladies and gentlemen, extremely important in many areas, and they relate not only to goods but also to services. So if you are in the services industry or services subsector of the oceans economy, you can protect your services trademark as well. So this becomes, again, very important to be able to do that beyond the national jurisdiction in which your company is registered right now, but extends also to protection of traditional knowledge, very important in certain aspects, for example, of the tourism subsector of the oceans economy. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to stop there in the interest of time. I know we are under a little bit of pressure, but if there are any questions, I'd be very happy to answer them. But I do want to emphasize that the oceans economy and the oceans economy development agenda of its myriad of subsectors, so to speak, has not perhaps enjoyed the priority on the AFCFTA agenda as it should. And therefore, what we do need to do is to look at where the negotiations are right now and find entry points to make sure the Oceans Economy Development Agenda is taken up within the AFCFTA with binding commitments so that we can have effective development, job creation, and the broader investment to develop the capacity of this economy in the interest of our broader development agenda. Thank you so much.
Trudy, thanks very much for the presentation. We are appreciative almost of the last point that says that there is not much of an expression of the oceans economy within the agreement, and therefore our actions need to be tailored towards that. I had asked the hosts of the event to ensure that we have got an opportunity for question and answers. They've advised me to direct people to the question and answer box right at the bottom of your screens, so that the panelists can then have an opportunity to view your questions and then respond. If you want it to be live, they would do so. But if you also want it to be in writing, please indicate that as well. I know that Prof. Hoskins had wanted to address the issue of the 4.4 contribution to the GDP, and I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to deal with that. So colleagues, please utilize the box, question and answer box that is available for us to be able to respond to some of the questions that you might have. Can we then, having listened to the three, then ask that the co-champion for the transportation sector, Ms. Fumni Folorunso, to be ready to make her presentation. Thanks very much.
If I have seen you before, like we have taken the number of one of our PAs, easier. Hello. They will tell that because she's the one that sent me.
No, Miss Fumi, we can hear you.
Distinguished participants, organizers, I want to thank you most sincerely for giving me an opportunity to speak at this event. Permit me to ditch my presentation and just give some from the heart matters that I think we should bring to the table. I wish to thank Trudy because she's done beautifully well. Honestly, I would just have gone to sleep after her paper, but I will not. I thank you organizers for this opportunity once again. The African Free Trade Area Agreement is a lifetime. Some say it is ambitious, but Africans say it is what we need at this time. The market that we have has been tripled and whatever not. The potentials of the African Free Trade Area is known to us. African needs, and I want to emphasize this, AFCFTA must work. We must start to see ourselves not as Kenya, Nigeria, but as Africans. The market that is opening to us, forget the trillions that we have spoken about. My area of concern is the abject poverty that Africa is going through and will surely go through if AFCFTA does not work. Permit me to say, although each country is looking at the opportunities from a national perspective, we should start to look at synergy of efforts at continental level. Excuse me. Now, distinguished audience, if there was no AFCFTA, I would not be at this event. I would not be talking to you about the prospects and what it stands for. Today, African Ship Owners Association has become bigger, larger because of the AFCFTA. There is now the ASA, South Africa, ASA, Kenya, ASA, Nigeria, and guess what? ASA, Uganda. And we're all speaking together to ensure that there is a synergy. What bigger market, what greater thing are we looking at? Can we pause for a few minutes, address our minds? The European Union didn't start one day. It has gone through lots of challenges. It is still going through. But today, an EU passport is a formidable passport. I am looking at that. The customs union, the African Customs Union, is a continental benefit that we should all look at. Products in South Africa can be made available in Kenya as easily as a Kenyan product can be made available in Tanzania. Is something that's exciting. The manufacturers have a bigger market. I will not talk about ships just yet. My services is now and could be made available all specific. I want us to have a sense of what AFCT means for Africa. This is what we need. This is what we must work at. Let us take the challenges and work at the challenges. Let's not ditch the baby and the water. Let's look at it individually and work together at it. Let me go and talk about the ships that is key to us. Today, what we have is a South African ship can trade in any part of Africa. Hello? Hello?
Yes, sir, for me, we can hear you.
Now, I want us to, like I said, let's focus on the benefits and less on the problems. The economic gains of the AFCFTA is much more than the losses or challenges we're going to face. It's a long-term thing. It's going to take a long while. But my take on it, we have so much going for us in Africa, and we cannot do it alone. And therefore, we need to work together as a continent to see it work. Distinguished audience, because of what Trudy has done earlier, I am really not going to go into details because she's done very, very well. However, my emphasis here is to say, let's look at the continental benefits and focus less on the national problems and issues. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
For me, thanks very much for the talk and your contribution to it. colleagues, let's have the understanding that we had wanted to counterbalance one in a South African perspective, and then widely, the continental view. And I think that they've dovetailed in some respects, and we have no doubt that we'll be able to engage with it on that basis. We're now going to move on to the contribution of skills capacity building, research and innovation. We're saying that there are two things. One, these can contribute to the GDP, by themselves. Not only that, but they are key enablers that if you have an intent to grow the economy, surely then you must focus on these. To lead the session, we have got Professor Oscar Philander from the Department of Mechanical Engineering at the Cape Peninsula University of Technology. Prof. Philander, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for the opportunity to present at this webinar. I'm not sure if my camera is on, if colleagues can actually see me. I switched on, Chair.
We can see
We
you.
can.
Okay. Well, anyway, so yeah, I just wanted to obviously show my face, show who I am. I will essentially stop my video and then I'll go on to the presentation. So the presentation, or my presentation, obviously is entitled Skills Capacity Building and Research and Innovation, a South African Perspective. But I thought I'll use the example of the work that was conducted in Elands Bay. And it essentially brought together various government departments and of course my university, CPUT, in developing specific technologies for that community. I also believe that this example can be used as a microcosm of what other fishing communities in South Africa could potentially achieve, and obviously moving forward, the institute, the role that the institute can play in making this a reality. So just very briefly, I've been involved in technology development and platform development over a couple of years. And quite recently, my focus has moved from the normal publications and writing for journals to more innovation, intellectual property development, and patenting. And looking at that, obviously, the technology readiness levels plays an important role in developing technologies for whatever sector that you are involved in. But just taking a step back, so coming from Peninsula Technikon, obviously Peninsula Technikon and Cape Technikon joined forces to form Cape Peninsula University of Technology. But coming from the Peninsula Technikon, the initial phase of the technology readiness levels were not actually focused on. And quite a lot of work had to go into developing the understanding of basic principles, technology concept, application formulations, and also then working on analytical and experimental critical function of various technologies. And so a lot of work went into actually developing this capability, starting off, I would say, in the early 2000s, just focusing on developing that capacity in the previously disadvantaged institution that was Peninsula Technikon, and then of course becoming a University of Technology where the name in itself becomes a driver for technology in the country. And looking at that, I thought I'll use the technology readiness levels to describe how the engagement with Elands Bay actually happened and where we are at this present moment in time. So just very briefly, Elands Bay, of course, is a coastal town in the Western Cape province on the Atlantic Ocean. It's located about 220 kilometers from Cape Town. And the region is known specifically for lobster fishery, and that industry is one of the oldest industries in South Africa. Now, this area is also prone to red tide events that occur, and these events obviously starve oxygen from the ocean, and it basically causes rock lobster landings to occur. Now, when this happens, the economy of those small towns are heavily impacted, as well as the socioeconomic impact is felt by all the individuals living in those specific towns. And if we look at, again, those technology readiness levels, the first one there came to us, I would say, in the early 2000s, where we basically had to develop the basic technology research and proving the feasibility of the specific type of technology. And what we had to do was lay the foundations and develop a capacity within the university and within the department to actually simulate and develop technologies for a particular application, which was these coastal observers. And at the time, as I said, it included quite a lot of different aspects related to research, from computational fluid dynamics, structural analysis, and other analytical methods to actually develop this capability. And that then took us to the next stage, where we could then, understanding the environment, develop different types of solutions for particular environments within the ocean. Our tech development really then started when the Department of Environmental Affairs requested us to develop a coastal observer, essentially supply them with 5 coastal observer platforms to monitor and identify when these red tide events actually occur. And we went through the entire process of first experimental deployments. We had to essentially develop a capacity in terms of creating diving operations and a dive team within my unit, within CPUT, and then working together with the Department of Environmental Affairs, actually look at those initial deployments, the testing, and everything that goes with the actual product development, just in terms of going through the entire process of getting all the systems and subsystems operating correctly for the particular application that it was going to serve. Then looking at the actual development of the actual flotation model, the construction of power systems to power the various instrumentation on board. And that was done very successfully as well. Looking then at the engineering development, specifically looking at how these systems are placed in the ocean, the maintenance schedules, and with that, I developed a dive team to specifically look at servicing and maintaining these systems while under development. Again, joining forces with environmental affairs to deploy these systems, get them into the ocean, and then taking it through the final 90-day sea acceptance trial for the Department of Environmental for the Department of Environmental Affairs, and then getting the adequate data required to predict when these red tide events actually occur. Now, the outcome of all of this, and you will see quite clearly that in terms of the product processes designed, developed, and improved in terms of manufacturing processes, 12 came out there. We developed 10 functional prototypes that went onto the actual system. We were also involved with localization of one of the instruments. It's a Norwegian instrument that goes onto the actual system. And overall, the intellectual property development, skills development that came out of this became quite a key factor in the entire engagement. And then, of course, the systems test and operations was completed. I'm just showing the entire process of technology development through this TRLs that I showed. Now, a list of patents were filed in 2019. And one of the primary factors, I would say success factors of this project, was the actual engagement with the community, and the community being the beneficiaries of the actual technologies that we developed. And so the first engagement we had was with the learners of the Elands Bay Primary School, where we educated them on red tides, on the specific technology that we're placing in the ocean and why it's there. And that then led us to engage with the actual fishing community. And in our first engagement, over 150 members actually attended our session. It was broken up into 2 sections, and CPUT and the Department of Environmental Affairs together engaged with the community to understand exactly their specific needs and as a fishing community moving forward. And quite a lot of input came from the community, and we then categorized them in terms of those 3 specific areas. Training, of course, very important, safety at sea, and then business investment. And I think some of the previous speakers spoke to the business investment, not just necessarily at the major cities, but also at these small fishing communities. And there's quite a list of activities that is required to uplift just normal fishing operations in these fishing communities. But as a University of Technology, obviously, we focus specifically on aspects that we could provide. And one of the clear needs that the fishermen had was understanding how to fix and better operate their boats. And out of that, we then developed a short course on composite materials, composite structures, and manufacturing with composite materials. We offered that over a 2-day period to the fishermen. And at the end of the day, what was it? 3 of the community members brought their boats, and we actually used those boats to show the rest of the community how to go about fixing their vessels. Very importantly as well, obviously, and I mentioned this previously, the localization of training, instrumentation setup, maintenance and repair was done with a Norwegian company called Nortec that was quite willing for us to develop this local capability within South Africa. So going through the entire process and developing these technology, being that the intellectual property is now registered with CPUT, the university then established a company. And this is just a short video showing the capabilities of this company. sorry, I just thought I'll end it there. But I believe that this is an example of how the great role that Operation Phakisa, specifically the Ocean Phakisa, played in bringing together various government departments from science and innovation, environmental affairs, agriculture, forestry and fisheries, the two international partners, and also other funding agencies, including CPUT, bringing all of them together to provide a specific solution for the people of Elands Bay that really require these types of technologies, obviously for their day-to-day livelihoods. And of course, there's examples of a host of other technologies that we have also been involved in terms of drones, and drones specifically related to improving situational awareness of your maritime domain. This can also be implemented. So if we look at what was achieved just through that specific project there, definitely skills and human capital development. There was space for skills transfer, technology development, technology transfer, innovation, of course, technology localization, and the potential for commercialization, as I showed in CPUT's marketing video as well. But the key lessons learned specifically, and I think what is needed in South African context moving forward, is definitely a multi-stakeholder involvement, which includes your universities, government, your SOEs, industry, and also your internationals, as well as the community that we are trying to benefit. There should be a focused technology development and innovation drive, community engagement and participation. And I keep on talking about the importance of the community, because they are the individuals that are benefiting from these technologies. Strong leadership, both from the top as well as on the ground, the people actually doing the work on the ground. The leadership of these type of engagements is very important, and this was clearly shown in the activity that we completed over that period of time. Establishing a maritime framework for applied mathematics and science, looking specifically at systems engineering and product lifecycle management, and how those two aspects come into the development of products for this environment. And then very importantly, understanding the development environment, may it be medical, maritime, or aviation, and specifically looking at those environments will then lead to specific technology developments for this particular industry. Thank you. That's my presentation.
Thanks very much, Professor Philander. We appreciate your presentation. Colleagues, to conclude the presentation, we will then have Professor Nakazawa, the Executive Director for the International Association of Maritime Universities, sharing an international perspective to juxtapose it with the South African perspective presented by Professor Philander. Thanks very much, Professor Nakazawa.
Hello. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for your introduction. Can you see me? I'm not sure that.
Yes, we can, Professor.
Okay. I'd like to share the screen of my presentation. This one. Okay.
Yes.
Can you see the presentation? It's a good size. It's big enough for you to recognize.
Yes, Prof.
Okay. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. The good afternoon. I think the good morning or the good afternoon. In my country, Japan, is actually it's now the 7 o'clock in the evening. So that means that we should say the good evening to all. Yeah. Anyway, thank you very much for inviting me to very interesting the webinar, which is called The Growth of Ocean Economy. In my capacity as an executive director of the International Association of Maritime Universities, today I am going to speak to you about the importance of the strategy to educate and train qualified seafarers in a country, hopefully your country, the South Africa, which is very much related to the topic of skill capacity building and the research and the innovation based on the international perspective. As you might know, the United Nations, just adopted one of the resolutions on the 1st December 2020, in which the General Assembly urges the member states to designate the seafarers and other marine personnel as the key workers. Maybe many of you already know. Then after that, the IMO welcomed that the UN resolutions on the key workers, seafarers. You see that this is the copy of the document, part of the document, and then soon after the 46 member state of IMO member state, including one associate members, designated the seafarers as the key workers on 14 December, immediately after the issue of the resolution. As far as you know, the South Africa, your country, is one of the 46 member states which first designate the seafarers as the key workers. Your country very much highly recognized the importance of the seafarers. And then the latest information I have collected on 20th of May 2021, in total the 62 member states, including 2 associate members, Hong Kong and the Faroe Islands, designated the seafarers as the key workers as of that day. You know that although this resolution, resolution is actually adopted in the context of the pandemic of COVID-19, as we know, that we all know that the importance of the seafarers is indispensable. But why the seafarers are so important in the international shipping? Yes, everyone knows that they operate the ship safely, securely, and environmental friendly. And the United Nations General Assembly acknowledged in that resolution that the shipping has continued to transport more than 80% of the world trade, essential to normal functioning of the society. Yep, and the document also mentioned that there are approximately 2 million seafarers in the world, and they work on the fleet of more than 98,000 commercial ships. And those ships transport more than 11 billion tons of seaborne trade. So that means the seafarers support the world trade and the logistics, international logistics. This is one of the reasons why the seafarers is important, and then which is fully recognized by the United Nations. What about the other things? The seafaring is a gateway to the national maritime industry. That's not exactly the same point of view, because this is slightly limited in one country, the national maritime industry. As you know, even after the leaving a port, leaving ships, many of the seafarers stay in the maritime industry. Many of the ex-seafarers stay in the maritime industry with the knowledge and the experience they have obtained during the sea time. Now, there are several areas that need ex-seafarers, such as the shore-based job in maritime industry, maritime administration, and even the MIT institution needs those people who had a good experience as the seafarers. And they contribute to the developed national maritime cluster industry through their knowledge and the experience they obtained during their sea time. So the seafarers developed the national maritime industry as well. So to conclude these two importance, the seafarers are not only the key workers, but also the contributors to the sustainable development of the world trade and the national maritime industry in the world. This is exactly very, very important. Okay. Now it's moved to how the one of the country the set up the strategy to train the qualified seafarers. This figure shows the process in which the candidate joined the MIT institution to get the knowledge and skills through the education training they have obtained through the MIT institution, and to get the certificate of competency, that is the license, to become a professional seafarers or the officers. As you know that all these, the process should be fully covered by the quality standard system as required in the SCCW convention, and then monitored by the administration of each country. And the result of the periodical evaluation, these results should inform to the IMO. This process, the fully based on the two key elements, which are the quality and the accountability. Okay, and then the quality standard system should cover, that the whole of the quality of a MIT process, and including the certification the system, and also the qualification and the experience of the teaching staff. That means the instructor and the assessors. So these are the SCCW requirement. Based on this one, each of the country have to set up the strategy, train the qualified seafarer, whether those seafarers to go to the national shipping or the international shipping. So if those seafarers join into the national shipping, they will help to develop the national shipping. And then if those those seafarers join into the international shipping, unfortunately, the seafarer, the contributions not go directly to the development of national shipping and national shipping industry, but maybe through the salary, those countries will get the foreign currency. Through the salary of the seafarers, the work for the international shipping, right? So the strategy to train the qualified seafarers should be decided by each of the country, whether the national shipping or the international shipping. I'm going to give you one of the example based on the statistical data I obtained from my country, Japan. The graph shows the number of the ships and their flag in between the year 1970 to 2000. This is exactly the period that the development and also the oil shock, oil crisis, and then some other things, Japanese development. So that I selected this certain period, 30 years of the period from 1970 to 2000. You see the number in the beginning, before the oil crisis or the early 1970s, the total number of the Japanese, the vessel controlled by the Japanese shipping companies, both including a Japanese flag vessel and a foreign flag vessel, are increasing until around the 1975. And after that, they're steady, and then they slightly reduce. And about after that, they're almost the same total number of the vessel, just around the 2,000 number of the vessel. But we see in detail what kind of the flag they float on board the ship, whether Japanese or the foreign flag. You see the number of the Japanese flag vessel in the beginning, it's around the 1,500, but after the 1985, the drastically reduced, and then at the end of the 2000, it's less, around just the 100 flag vessel, Japanese flag vessel. Why this happened? It's a very interesting in the history of this. If I try to explain everything, the background, it may take more than 1 hour. So I have to skip this kind of the detailed explanation. But you see that if I plotted the exchange rate in between the US dollar and Japanese yen, if you look at this one, there is some sort of the correlation in between the Japanese flag vessel, number of the Japanese flag vessel, and the exchange rate. And if we just calculate the coefficient of the correlation in between these two, R squared is 0.87, which shows us a strong positive linear correlation between the exchange rate and the number of the Japanese flag vessel, because of this is very much related to the international competitiveness of the flag vessel, Japanese flag vessel. So this Maritime, the total number of the Japanese flag vessel is very much relating to the one of the index of the economic growth worldwide. Right? Move to the number of the Japanese seafarers in the same period from 1970 to 2000. You see the number in the beginning, the number of the Japanese seafarers in the early stage in 1970s, 1980s, there's still over this 50,000 seafarers, including both the officers and rating. But something happened in 1985, drastically reduced. First of all, the rating, and then after the officers as well. So what's going to happen? What the relationship between this one? And I just plotted GDP of the Japanese GDP, trillion of US dollars. If you see what happened in 1985, before and after that, the development of the GDP drastically changed. And at that time, before that, if you plot just to see the between before the 1985 and then after the 1985, what happened on the seafaring? Before the 1985, the Japanese seafarers on board a vessel. But after that, the foreign seafarers on board a vessel and the shipping industry totally changed the policy and how they employed the seafarers at that time. So economic growth was also to change this kind of a situation. And then that means that to set up the strategy to train and educate and train the seafarer, qualified seafarers, is very much relating to the economic growth of a country. So that's why it's very, very difficult. And you always monitor whether your strategy is good or the meet your requirement or not. This is a very simple equation. I always explain to my student the competency equation to be qualified. C equal bracket K plus S bracket close times A, where the A equal the function of the M. So the symbol C, K, S, A, M here, so they are clarified here. C as a competency equal the knowledge plus skill times the attitude, where the attitude is a function of the motivation. If you just think about this formula, who just provided the knowledge and the skill? The knowledge through the education or the theoretical education, the skill from a training, maybe on-board training, and who are providing this one? You see that the MET institution and or the training vessel. And for the attitude is a function of motivation. The who just provide the student the strong motivation to study. So maybe the teacher at the MET institution will give them the motivation to study, but more obviously, the salary of the seafarers will give them a very strong motivation, and then the social welfare and these kind of things also increase the motivation. So from that point of view, to provide the student with to provide the student with the very high levels of competency, MET institution is not only the process to provide the competency. You know that they are not only the institution, but also for the industry and the administration also help to give them the competence to be qualified. Based on this one, I would like to show the triangle for seafarers in the national level. You know that the seafarers are in the center. In the center, you see this one here, the seafarers here in the center. And the surrounding that we have three elements. That means that on the top, the maritime administration, and this point, the shipping industry, and then this point, the maritime institutions. And these three the elements provide, for instance, the maritime administration provide the seafarer with a certificate, and shipping industry provide the seafarers with the employment or the job opportunity. And maritime institution, yes, needless to say that they provided the education training for the seafarers. As far as I know, the country fully recognized as a maritime nation, just like the Norway and those countries, they have very strong triangle, this one. So that means that they are not only the independent, the three elements, they have the very strong relationship amongst others. Yep, the maritime administration and then shipping industry and the MET institution have a very, very strong correlation all the time. So this is one of the point I've always wanted to focus on this one. Yep. But if the triangle is under the globalization, and the situation is not exactly the same, but the similar triangle exists. I mean, instead of the maritime administration, the IMO with a member state, they have a forum, they have a discussion, is a plenary session, and so on to make a decision to set up the competency standard here, this one instead of the seafarers. And then for this kind of the international maritime organizations, the ITF, ICS, Intertanko, etc., they have a network, and then with the member states. Under such a situation, why the MET institution should have this kind of the global the network? And the IMU, my association, and the global MET, etc., should have this kind of the structure. A new triangle under the globalization. Okay, now based on this one, I would like to slightly introduce briefly introduce my association, International Association Maritime University. Honorary Chair, the Dr. Yohei Sasakawa, Chairman of the Nippon Foundation, our biggest donor. And Chairman right now is Mr. Glenn Blackwood, the Vice President, Memorial University of Newfoundland, Canada. And number of the members should have MET courses with a bachelor degree plus maritime related the Master of the Science and or the PhD. At the 41 universities in Europe and Africa, there are only 2 member universities from Africa. One is in Egypt and another one in Ghana. Regional Maritime University, only these 2. 18 universities in Asia, Pacific, and Oceania, and 10 universities in the Americas, World Maritime University, and the Nippon Foundation. These are our member. Member universities, they are the 69 universities of 36 countries as of September 2020. So because of the national strategy is buried even in these 36 countries. Some countries have a very strong policy to train the good seafarers. Some other countries that have another strategy to train the researcher and so on and so on. So this is a very unique group of the association together with the Maritime University from many of the countries. Secretariat, actually I'm an executive director for operated the secretariat located in Tokyo. Okay. This is the group photo of the 20th commemorative annual General Assembly in October 2019, 2 years ago. The last year, unfortunately, because of the COVID-19, we couldn't organize the annual General Assembly. We postponed the one. And you see about the outcome of the annual General Assembly 20, the commemorative one. We newly established the Nippon Foundation and then the Imu Scholarship Program. This is for the capacity building and the sustainability of the maritime education training. The scholarship program is not only for the student, but also for the young academic staff who get the higher degree program without paying any additional money, so that we fully support those people. This is the very strong the philosophy for the sustainability of the maritime education training worldwide. The Global Maritime Professional Body of Knowledge, that the copy of that one here, the body of knowledge does contain, first of all, we set that what the competence is needed to be a global maritime professional, not only just a seafarer. I mean, for the shore basis, we set up the competence needed to be the global maritime professional, and then after that, how we train them. And then we just check in detail the subject and the learning outcomes of based on this one. So all this information is compiled in the body of knowledge in this one. This is now the free of charge. So if you are interested to download this one, you will come to you'll visit our website and you can freely download this information. And the adoption of the issues of the Tokyo Statement, that shows the policy of the IMU activity for the next 20 years and so on. What about our activity? There are 4 pillars of our activity. One is association, as an association of the MET institution. We focus on the education training to explore the quality MET beyond the SEC requirement. And we are also the association of universities, so that the research is a very important activity as a university. to be a center of the excellence in MET with the academic degree program. Not only just a training and then the education. We set out the research that we recognize the research is also very good for the student to be a qualified seafarers. And also we are the association with the global network, the collaboration is one of the key words to encourage collaborative activities among the member university and the maritime industry. And the last the pillar is that as an association with the NGO is a consultative status with IMO, the involvement into the discussion in the IMO to voice the opinion on behalf of MET institution in the world. So these are also our base 4 pillars of our activity. Our activity is more detailed, annual general assembly, and at that time, we organized the conference joint where each of the staff members, the member university, just exchange their research activity and the outcome, and then sometime based on this one, they can newly join make the collaborative group member amongst many of the member universities. And the working group activity, which is for the maritime community institutional database that contained all of the member universities, the information, and peer-assisted evaluation scheme for the maritime universities, and the research and the academic publication. We encourage this activity for the all member university, and the quality of a model training, which now is that we support we submitted many of the paper to IMO discussion. Organizational development project for IMU members, and the research project, as I mentioned, we set up a 4 funded project coordinated by the academic staff member, and 2 or 3 funded project coordinated by young academic staff member, because we consider that sustainability is very important for the future. And we supported the research fund for the member university, but at a very strong, very tough competition all the time, the selection process and so on. And we also invited students from time to time to have a forum, for instance, at the IMO, et cetera, et cetera. These are one of our current activities so far. Sustainability of the MET is very important. The sustainable supply of the qualified MET instructor. Without having the qualified MET instructor, how we can train and educate the qualified seafarer? From that point of view, we have a new activity right now, because some of the maritime developed country, the qualified MET instructor who has a good knowledge and the experience, but they have retired without giving us their knowledge and then the experience of their successor in their country. Because no young generation are interested to be a seafarer in those countries sometimes. So we send those people to some of the maritime developing country. The young instructors still need the appropriate mentor to apply the knowledge and the experience as a qualified MET instructor. Our association can do this one because, as I mentioned, that they are the 69 member university, the situation is totally different. So that some member university have a surplus of a qualified teacher, and some other the member university need more qualified teacher. We just exchange those people. So at the Maritime University, the MET instructor have recently been required to have academic qualification. For the further promotion, we set up the IAMU section in the WMU Journal of Maritime Affairs, who accepted this kind of the paper for the MET instructors. and by which they can get to some point, if they successfully publish their paper on this one, they can get the certificate, the index factor, so that this will help them to be promoted for the future. This is our new activity right now. That all this one relating to the sustainability, international sustainability of the maritime MET, that means the qualified MET instructors. So these are, and then also the relationship with the maritime industry in the global level, strengthened the relationship with the maritime industry. The one of the activity, recent activity, together with the International Chamber of Shipping, that we organized the webinar, which topic is the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic of the maritime education training. This is a kind of the bridge between the maritime industry and the MET institution, and the successfully organized this one. And then after that, the outcome is submitted to IMO, as shown here, right? These are our activity. So what I wanted to say at the end, I would like to conclude this one, to set up the strategy to train and educate the qualified the seafarers is very difficult, because the whole country is in the globalization. So to consider how you can make it the proper the strategy, you need to have a discussion with other people, other countries, other institutions. Then by this one, you can get a new idea of how you can develop your strategy to train, and then the objectives of your maritime institution, and then through this one, you can get the better the income through your seafaring, through your qualified seafarers as well. And this is what I wanted to say to you. Thank you for your attention. If you're interested to oh no, it's not the IAMY. Sorry, this is the IAMU. Just to visit the http www.iamu-edu.org. So this website also to provide you to download the global the body of knowledge of a global maritime professional. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Prof. We have asked the panelists to look at the question and answer box and try within 2 minutes of each. We'll start with you, Prof. Mwati, that you respond to the issues that you think are important, and then Patrick in the order that the presentation was done. And then after that, we'll then have the thank you and the way forward, and then we conclude the session. Thanks very much. Prof. Mwati.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Prof. Narazao.
Sorry, thanks, Chair. I missed a bit of what you said. Can you just repeat again, Chair?
No, I was saying that if we look at the question and answer box,
yes,
and you find questions that are appropriate to the presentation, you may want to respond now as you conclude as part of your presentation, and then we'll ask the same question.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Well, I'm looking at it now. I've been, checking on the box here. There was, a question that was looking at.
The main question for you, Prof. was from.
I don't see any directly to me as such. I'm looking at them now. I'm just scrolling down. Nothing as such. A question directly to me as such. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a comment from Prof. Hoskins.
Yes, Prof. Hoskins. Yes, he left a note here,
yes.
Which says he just explained how he derived that 4.4%, and of course he also indicated that there's more work that he needs to do on that. He talks about, he says one was based on a contribution to GDP over time that could be inferred from GDP contributions in narrowing input-dominated geographic production areas of appropriate definition, not provincial, he says. So he says this remains a contribution that still have to make. So in other words, he talks about, I think if I can interpret this, is more the provincial contribution. I think what he did on his estimations was based on South Africa as a whole, which also I think our study as well look at South Africa. So we appreciate Professor Hoskins' contribution. We appreciate it so very much, and of course the work is yet to do in terms of contribution towards the province GDP, which would be much appreciated. I'm pretty sure we will have contacts with him and then work forward together, going forward on this to test these theories and contribution of GDP to the province.
Thanks very much, Postman. Patrick, I think there were two. I'm not sure if the one that they directed the FTA. One was the issue of the transformation of the sector, and then second was the person who's been given a runaround by CNPA to obtain a license.
Thank you, Chair. Yes. The first question to those who haven't got it, how transformed is the shipbuilding and repairs, and if not transformed enough, what needs to be done in making sure that the transformation agenda is achieved? I can only say that all of the companies that I work with, and I'm talking about the major companies, are all BE level 1. We all run significant supplier development programs. We have a particularly successful one in that we started with some entrepreneurs, some previously disadvantaged entrepreneurs a couple of years ago, some ship repair capability. They all came from ship repair backgrounds, and they are now a major supplier of ours. In fact, probably our single biggest supplier, and we work with them every day as an ESD. So there are lots of success stories. I don't know what yardstick one would use, excuse me, to measure the degree of transformation. I suppose it can be done from the returns from the government, but if I can't think of a company that I work with that is not already BE level 1. I think of all the sectors that I've worked with, I think the ship repair industry is significantly transformed. But of course, that doesn't help if there's not new business coming in. And we want to see more emerging black participants. But when the cake is too small to divide further, that becomes an obstacle to entry. When the industry is growing and there's new clients coming in, then there's plenty of capacity to grow more new entry black companies. I'm not sure if the person who posed this question is still with us, and if so, can I ask you, is that answer sufficient?
I think that's adequate for the purposes of this session. We must take away the fact that we still need to do more. That's what we have done.
Yes.
The attitude. But obviously, we look at strategies of how we can help to accelerate transformation of the sector. Thanks, Patrick.
The second question was from Anonymous. It says, how can we as a youth SME acquire a hull cleaning license as TNPA is giving runarounds, but abroad clients and agents want their props cleaned? Okay. Firstly, I don't represent TNPA, and I certainly share the frustrations of Anonymous. We work every day in the space, and every day we have similar issues. There was a license approved by TNPA in Durban, and I think Kobera as well, or in Kucha, I'm not sure. And then the last time that we chatted about this online with the Cape Town port manager, she said that the Cape Town license approval is imminent, and that was some weeks ago. So maybe by this stage it has been issued. I haven't seen it yet. But so yes, in theory, participants can come into the space, but the practical execution of trying to get something done is very different. So I do share Anonymous's frustration, and if Anonymous is still listening, I would suggest, I'm not too sure where Anonymous is situated, which port he or she is, but I suggest that he or she contacts the local port manager in the port where he or she is resident or wants to operate, and take it from there. Because it is a need. I'm in that space in the industry, and it's definitely a need, and could be a very, very lucrative market if we can have ships. Lots of ships come in for only a couple of days, but they need some attention to cleaning. This is a great opportunity, I think, Anonymous. Chair, that's it.
Yeah. Should we have asked the excuse, can I confirm that she has indeed left? She has. Thanks very much. Fumi, are there any particular points that you wish to conclude on? She seems to have been driven away from the seminar. Prof. Philander?
Yes, sir.
Your concluding thoughts?
Yes. So just from my side, I think my presentation dealt with one particular case involving technology development, but I believe that so much more can be done, and with the Institute obviously being the driver of these types of initiatives. I think moving forward with Operation Pakisa, so much more can be achieved. And just again, thank you for the opportunity to actually just show what we've done at CPUT.
Thanks very much.
Good day, colleagues. I think we have lost Mr. Mtati. If
Hi,
there...
Marisa.
Okay. Can I continue?
I was just saying that with the School of Economics, we're going to explore a relationship that look at measures on how we can support the ocean economy through information packaging and provisioning. So that's the one thing. From a industry perspective, as Patrick has indicated, we seek to be influenced and be led by industry in some regards. So we're going to refine our relationship to ensure that whatever it is that we do is, actually centered around some of the industry-related issues. To the earlier point, of course, the information would contain statistics on who are the participants from a gender perspective, from a youth perspective, and whatever else that is required. So we've already started the process of trying to package things like that. With Charlotte, we have discussed the development of a closer relationship so that we can look at the effective usage of the Free Africa Trade Agreement as an enabler of people wanting to take opportunities within the continent itself. We've recognized the importance of research and innovation, and therefore, with all universities in the country, we have got a keen interest in strengthening our relationship with them, and also from an international perspective, our relationship with the International Maritime University. Over to you, Navi. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good day. I'm Nobi Samadoti from SAIMI, and I will be providing the closing remarks for this session. I'd like to kindly request that I switch off my camera to improve my audibility. We have now reached the end of the seminar, and my task, as I've just already alluded to, is to provide the closing remarks, which is an honor and great privilege to be entrusted with at this gathering of stakeholders from industry, government, and academia. With that, we would like to express our gratitude to you all for being here today and taking the time to patiently listen to the excellent presentations that have been provided today, and also participating in the discussions through our chat box. We have had plenty to reflect upon today. And if this in any way enhances our individual and collective contributions to addressing the challenges that we are facing in the sector, then this webinar will be deemed a success. There's been numerous positions and points of view that have been outlined, which I won't go through because Mr. Mtati has actually provided some highlights on those areas. So these insights and action items, therefore, that are coming out of this webinar will be part of the report that will be provided and distributed through various platforms, including our website. Of course, we don't want this to be just another talk shop. Also, SAIMI will make efforts in ensuring that the recommendations that have been made today are implemented in collaboration with the stakeholders in the sector, with a view to ensuring that our vision of growing the oceans economy is achieved. Thank you once again to all our presenters and to our audience or attendees for participating in this webinar, not forgetting the SAIMI team that organized this event, including those that contributed to the content, ranging from the conceptualization of this webinar to the series of articles that have been issued. As part of our advocacy efforts, we are looking forward to seeing you again very soon as we reconvene to discuss another topical area affecting the sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nobi. We've noted even some of the comments that are coming through, and we will make the effort to respond to all of the questions that have been raised. Colleagues, thanks very much for your participation. It is much appreciated. You are now free to go back to work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. That was very edifying indeed. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Patrick. Thanks, Prof. Thanks,
Thanks,
Prof.
everyone. Thanks, Samtati. Thanks, all the colleagues. Thank you very much. Next time around.
Thank you. Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.